Good morning and welcome to my channel. I'm Mark Kinsey and I am still the Clueless Luthier. I really should have titled today's video Elevated Pucker Factor because it's true. All the videos I've seen of people first doing the binding fear it, and I get it because I've got it all closed up and I could really mess it up. So we're going to take it very slowly. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the excess around the side on both the top and the back. I am using a Dremel with a tiltable base, and I use this to measure the angle between the side and the top. I did it at the waist because that's the only place where I don't have excess. I had to take it off for the waist clamp. And it's at about 4 or 5 degrees, it seems. So I set this. I have a gauge here, a binding gauge. I don't know if that's the proper name. It just sets the depth that you go, and I've got it set so it shouldn't cut anything but the excess. And the depth, as best I can, should only go deep enough to take off the excess as well. So let me adjust the angle of the camera and we'll get going. All right, what I've done, I set up my 15-degree radius disc to match the back to kind of help hold it in place. I have a board here and here clamped down so that it'll also keep it from moving. This is just to block this in. I don't want it doing that. And what I'm going to do is start from the outside of each of the rounds. What do they call that? Anyway. And move in a clockwise order to try to reduce tear out. Okay, I've made a couple test cuts to get the depth down enough. It was a little shallow, which is good. And it looks perfect. I got all the way in without marking up the side at all. So I'm going to make my first cut. Okay, I'm not down far enough to take these out, but I'm good with that. I think I'm going to take those off with a knife. I like the fact that I'm only going that far. That might be in a little bit more, but no, I'm happy with that. I'm going to keep on going. All right, I got the top excess trimmed off without disaster. A little deeper here, that's interesting. Not bad, I mean, I'd have to take that off for binding anyway, but this is sort of warm up for doing the binding channels for me. Get a little more comfortable with the process, but I think I may have had that on an angle at that point because that would reduce the distance. So I'm gonna have to watch out for that. The rest of it, is looking really good. So next is to do the back. So I'm going to have to reset the angle since the back will be slightly different. So I'll do that now. Well, okay, it looks good. Looks pretty flush. No issues. Maybe a little overhang left there, but that'll be taken care of when I do the binding. Okay, so the next step is actually cutting the channels from the binding. And I honestly have to go back and do research to make sure I have all the measurements right. So that's what I'm going to do next. When I was inspecting the guitar, I noticed, I made it a little more visible, that I had a hump really on this side. At least I think that's most of it. And they made this look like a dip, and it may be dipped as well. It may be dipped. So what I'm doing is I am scraping this area, particularly in here, to reduce the amount of unevenness, because I'm worried about when I put the neck on that I'll have an issue. So I just wanted to point that out before I kept going forward. All right, I've been scraping away, and I think you can kind of see where it was, but there's not much of anything left there. But I scraped that all pretty much flat, and so that worked pretty well. All right, time to move on. I didn't realize I was working away on this, and what I thought was just a little bit of cleanup is a little bit more, so I thought I'd better turn the camera back on. What I've been doing is taking this scraper, going along the sides, and being aware of the grain. So coming from the bout, coming down, and just making sure that everything's nice and level, there aren't any problems before I start doing the binding. And then from here, doing the same thing, being aware of the grain. All right, I am going to start on the back. First of all, it's less visible, and it's simpler because there's no purfling. So I believe I have this set just a little bit shallow for the first pass, as far as depth this way. So I'm going to make a pass, start making a pass, and then check my binding, make sure I'm not out of luck. And this is where the pucker factor comes in. All right, I have the channel done for the back now. Before I start on the top, I probably could have done this earlier. I need to cut out the channel for this. And once again, the pucker factor is high. So let's see. I've marked it out. I'm going to go inside the line. I'd much rather trim. All right, I got this all cut and chiseled and filed out. I checked the neck fits pretty well. It's going to take some adjustment. But now it's time to move on to the top binding. Okay, I got a little carried away with the process and forgot to film this part. I have now done both the channel or ledge, whatever you can call it, for the binding, as well as a ledge for the purfling, all the way around. So the next thing to do is to create the piece to cut into back here. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare the end cap. I'm going to be cutting 6 inches for the end of the guitar, and this will be used for the bottom of the neck. So what we're going to do... Okay, I'm going to interrupt myself here. Suffice to say that I go on to miscut the piece of plastic at the end, or at least miscut the wood, depending on which way you want to view it. And I won't be doing that. The plastic piece I cut off, I will be using for the heel of the neck. But I will let me go on to explain what I'm going to do from here. So, I have an issue. I made one mistake and, well, 2 mistakes. One is when I was cutting this slot, I cut it a little too big. I was having trouble with the saw, and this goes all the way up to there before it's tight. The other issue is kind of stupid. I did it backwards. It was supposed to go like that. So, it's an opportunity. I'm going to do something a little different. Since the binding is black, I could order another piece of plastic, and I'm not going to. What I'm going to do instead is I have some walnut veneer that is really exactly the right thickness to use instead. And I think it will look really nice with the black binding. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to straighten this out so that it'll be a rectangular end piece instead of an angled one. So let's go. All right, I have to see how this will work. I need to get a nice square line, and I don't have any square edges to work with. So this should be kind of interesting here. Let's see if this works better. I'll give it a shot here. That feels pretty good. I think this will work better. About the right width. Should be able to get a nice straight line on this, I think. That line actually looked pretty good. This one I had more trouble with. Alright. So now I have to cut this, and that saw didn't work very well. I'm going to try something different. Alright. Scored this with my knife. Make sure I don't get a tear out here, hopefully. I'm going to cut it some more. Alright. I was unhappy with the edge on this side, and it wasn't centered as well as I like. So I widened the strip to 1 inch and made sure it was well centered with a center mark here. I'm just making sure I have a nice straight line with my file. Then I'm going to cut the piece of veneer to fit. That's looking pretty good now. I have a feeling I might like this better this way. Okay, I've cut my piece of walnut and it's fitting very nicely. It fits a little bit better one than the other, so I have to make sure I keep track of which way I'm putting it in. So, okay. Okay, now I'm going to put this in place. They're all set. Make sure I got it right here. I can always file a little bit if necessary, but whoops. That's what I don't want to have happen. Okay, now I have the call that I made for this end of the guitar originally. Oh, one more thing. Let us not forget. Got a little bit closer here. All right, and I'm going to let that set overnight because it's kind of the end of the day. So all goes well. See you tomorrow. All right, good morning. We are going to see how it looks. Not too much. All right. I have some fill here, maybe, but other than that, it looks good. I am going to, just to see what it's going to look like, I think, if I can get this open. I'll put some napkin on it. And get an idea what it's going to look like with the binding. Yeah, I don't know how well it shows up, but I think I'll like it. All right, well, that's done. The next part is to try to put the binding and the purfling on. And my small dexterity is not the best, so this should be interesting.